All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Everything School HQ, Tennessee baseball, taking care of business against Austin Peay following a weekend bye where they did not actually play any college baseball games over the weekend. It was one of those rare off weekends in the early part of May for the men's Tennessee baseball team. So that is all we have to say about that matter. We should focus on more pressing things like the University of Georgia crumbling with Dominick Blaylock not only entering the portal, but joining Brent Key and following Buster Faulkner to the Georgia Tech, to the flats.
Well, we're just going to jump right into it. But, I didn't really get much of an intro there. So, I wasn't really sure where to hop in to this conversation.
I thought I was going to do a whole thing. And I'm like, I don't really have a lot of Tennessee. I can't really brag right now at Tennessee. I mean, Kellen Lindstrom is entering the fold, 4-star edge. So another one, Tennessee's going to be another top 10 class. It's pretty much a lock at this point.
I wasn't talking about your Tennessee intro. I was talking about my personal intro onto it's my turn to speak. You know what I'm saying? So
that's fellow University of North Georgia, Matt Green. Matt, good evening. How are you?
How's it going, sir? Not to get in the middle. I know the listeners wanted to hear more about whatever Tennessee sports you're talking about, but I'm coming to you. I'm feeling good on this Tuesday evening. I would say roughly 25, 30 miles west of what they call Everything School HQ in Athens, Georgia. Taking 2 out of 3 this weekend versus the Tennessee Vols. Love to see it. Chase Thomas over here just making me care about sports I don't even care about. Like, I didn't watch 1 second of this series. I will admit that. But I saw the final scores each day, and I was just thinking, after they won that second game, if Georgia takes 2 out of 3 against Tennessee, this is going to be very sweet. So Foley Field, you don't just walk into Foley Field and expect to get the series win. So Bulldogs protecting the home turf.
God, I hate that. I have nothing. I can't really. Tennessee is just such a bad road team. Like, they're just the best team in college baseball when they're at home, and on the road just has been a dumpster fire all year long. Just a completely different team, which is a problem because they're probably not going to host a regional, and if they want to advance and make it back to the College World Series, they're going to have to win primarily on the road. So I don't know.
It's just like those high school football days or high school sports days when the football school like beats you in basketball and then they start chanting just like football, that whole thing. It's like they don't even care about this sport, and now they're bragging about it. Like, it's good stuff. Gotta love it.
I got to be a good sport. Like, Tennessee lost 2 or 3 this weekend. That did happen.
For sure. And also, on a personal note, we've come across a third Rottweiler.
I saw the picture here. I showed it to my wife, and I was like, send it our way. Send him our way.
Oh, man, this dog is incredible. I would, man.
You're keeping him.
He's he's honestly the perfect dog. You're
keeping him.
If he's just such good manners, I think, especially for a boy who's not fixed, like, he's so approachable. But we'll hopefully not getting our fingers crossed. I mean, we are getting our hopes up. There's somebody who's reached out that I know through my brother. So hopefully we're gonna drive him out like an hour away. So we'll hopefully they're gonna meet the kids and all that sort of thing tomorrow. So hopefully that can happen and he can find his forever home because. So basically, to tell you the story, it's big construction development going on probably a couple miles down the street from us, and construction workers found him, and I guess someone pointed him towards our house. They're like, they have Rottweilers, it might be theirs, and it was not ours, but we were just like, I actually drove with them to another house to see if it was their Rottweiler, because I know of one other house wasn't theirs. So me and Tori are just we can't not try to do something to help this dog. So we've been putting all kinds of things out there, calling people, and so I think we may have a lead. So I'll give you an update next week, see how that goes.
But a lead as in not where he came from, just on a lead for a new
No, definitely haven't found anything about where he came from. But in terms of someone who hopefully wants to keep him as a family dog.
But not chipped.
No, not chipped or anything. So, and yeah. So
who's not chipping their pups anymore? Like, we got Khaleesi right
Who knows, man? This guy's living on the street. Like, he's probably 8-10 months old. Like, he's definitely not fully grown, but it's like the sweetest dog ever. So I'm like, these dogs is like better behaved than both of our dogs. So I don't know what that says. This man's coming off the street, just already better on the leash and all kinds of things.
How is Zeus handling another Rottweiler in the fold?
No, we don't have him, like, we just have him like in the garage, just kind of give him a yard access. Like, we tried to kind of introduce him, but our dogs like just started. Maddox sucks at meeting people. Like, he's honestly terrible. That's on us. But yeah, and we're not like, and he's not fixed too. So he was just trying to, like, Zeus is cool. But he's like, then he starts trying to hump once he's getting excited. Not Zeus, but the new dog, because he's not fixed. But yeah, so it's like we can't really have him mingling. So we just got him out there. He's got some space. And yeah, we're holding on to him. Hopefully someone this week we can find somewhere for him. But yeah, it was been a busy day, or busy couple days this week.
Have you called him anything? What do you
Oh,
say?
they actually named him Rowan because this like huge development that's going on. It's up 316 over there in Gwinnett. It's like Rowan. I don't know. That's like the name of like the whole big project. I'm not really sure, but so that's what the construction workers. That's what they called him. So that's what we just kept calling him because don't want to get too attached. Even though he's an amazing dog for sure.
There you go. That was a good selling point. I like that.
He definitely is, man. Like, he's like literally the perfect dog. Like, if we and Tori were in a different stage, it's like the perfect dog just like came to our house, to our front door, basically, because he's not fully grown. A big dog, like big breed like that, I want him to not be fully grown, like when I get him. But the puppy stuff just sucks. The idea of the puppy is cool, but oh man, it's frustrating. So it's like 8-10 month old. He's still got some room to grow, but still young, But yeah, so we would definitely keep this dog if we didn't already have two. So yeah, but it was busy couple days for sure.
There you go. Well, don't forget, folks, every Tuesday night and first thing on your Wednesday morning commute, the full ride here with Matt Green talking all things college football each and every week. So make sure you're subscribed on your preferred podcast player so you never miss an episode on this daily national sports show. You can also watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/ChaseThomasPodcast. Like and subscribe there as we march towards 1,000 on the YouTube page. You can always email us for a future show at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com for any mailbag questions you might have for us, anything of the sort. As always, if you are already a fan of the full ride with Matt Green and myself here on the Tuesday night, Wednesday morning show, leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If that is how you're listening, it helps other people find the show, and it helps this very show continue to grow. Matt Green, Auburn. We have some new stuff we got to get into before we do our SEC over-unders. Way too early SEC over-unders, because we're going to do this summer our actual preview here for the series for each conference. But I wanted to throw that out.
I'm sure these lines will change too between now and August.
That's probably true as well, because injuries are a part of the sport. And also the portal. There's still some potential moves to be made here. But speaking of the portal, Auburn had two big ads, and one of them came out of nowhere. We were wondering if it was going to be Casey Thompson, who entered the portal. It looks like he lost the spring quarterback battle against Jeff Sims, formerly of Georgia Tech, at Nebraska. So it looks like Sims is going to be QB1 in Lincoln. But then it wasn't Casey Thompson. You thought Hugh Freeze, Casey Thompson made more sense, more mobile in the pocket, more experience, has at least shown flashes of late of being a good, solid at worst college quarterback, Power 5 quarterback. Peyton Thorne was just bad last year at Michigan State, and there were questions about, like, hey, what kind of fit is he? Because Hugh Freeze, we haven't seen quarterbacks like Peyton Thorne as much during the Hugh Freeze college coaching era. So it is interesting to see that Peyton Thorne was ultimately the guy that Auburn went with out of the portal. It's also interesting that Robbie Ashford, who was a highly touted Hoover kid, coming in there, 4-star quarterback, who played a lot last year for the Tigers, they didn't feel sold, clearly, on what they had with just Ashford and company. They have a big-time freshman whose name escapes me right now, who probably is the guy next year, but his name I cannot remember off the top of my head. But Matt Green, they bring him in, and they bring in a big Ohio State guy who got kind of lost in the shuffle because Ohio State has dudes everywhere. It's just really hard to get on the field as a wideout at Ohio State. Caleb Burton. So I think it's interesting. I think Auburn and what Hugh Freeze has done in the portal as a whole has been pretty impressive this offseason. He's obviously recruiting immediately at a top 10, top 15 level at Auburn, righting a lot of wrongs from the Brian Harsin era, and clearly a better fit for the region and what's expected at Auburn. But what do you make of all of that, and Peyton Thorne ultimately being an Auburn Tiger and potentially a day one starter this fall?
Well, I would definitely say that I wouldn't be sold on Robbie Ashford as like he was a fairly highly ranked recruit, but like we've seen plenty of top 200 4-star type commit. Like you have no idea what you're gonna get in that kind of range. So he's obviously got talent. He's a great athlete, but I mean, 7 touchdowns? I think 7 picks last year. Like he was fine. He's obviously a dynamic athlete, but I think you definitely needed to bring in someone. And I mean, at this point, I don't know what Auburn's options are. Like you said, I don't know if they had it was their choice of Casey Thompson or Peyton Thorne type of thing, and they went Peyton Thorne, or it's just Casey Thompson wanted to go somewhere. I mean, he's still not committed anywhere, right?
No.
So, I mean, who knows? So Peyton Thorne, he was pretty good in 2021. Like, not great. Obviously, that running game was the reason Kenneth Walker, why they were so good that year. But he was a good. I would say he was a good player that year. Like, not great, but he was good. So it's possible. And with Hugh Freeze, like he is one of the elite offensive minds, I would say, in the SEC right now. Like I wouldn't put it past, him getting the best out of Peyton Thorne. So I think this is, if nothing else, it's a healthy competition, because Ashford is definitely not the kind of guy that would just be like, okay, he's sold QB1. Like we need some options here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if this is going to be a part of it, is like this spring, like for quarterbacks who obviously see the writing on the wall in their current spot, and Casey Thompson did. Peyton Thorne's a little bit different because he and Keon Coleman both entered the portal in just a really hilarious way, because they both were on the same page, but they were both trying to get away from each other, potentially. So that was a really weird situation that happened just a few weeks ago in East Lansing. Like, it's just weird that Peyton Thorne is now an Auburn Tiger, Matt Green. Like, that was not something we had in our just this ever-changing quarterback landscape in college football. But it's just going to be weird that he might just be the day one starter at Auburn of all places. And I have no idea what to think of him, because like Robbie Ashford, like you said, struggled last year. He got hit a lot, obviously not a lot of talent. The scheme sucked, and Auburn's offense was pretty brutal to watch week in, week out. And Hugh Freeze, very QB-friendly offense. What could Hugh do with him? You just feel bad, 'cause it's like, what if he had started with Hugh Freeze at Auburn? What that kind of looks like for him and his development. But I am very curious to see how that ultimately unfolds. And I mean, Florida still not involved in any of these guys pop in the portal. They're I guess they're really just going with Graham Mertz and Jack Miller. It seems like they're dead set on it.
It's a bold strategy for sure. And Keon Coleman, it looks like he's going to be visiting Ole Miss here tomorrow, or maybe that was today.
Well, they have an opening.
So we could see a little Peyton Thorne versus Keon Coleman in some SEC West action. That'd be a nice little storyline. But I mean, Peyton Thorne is definitely an upgrade over Robbie Ashford. Like, I mean, Robbie Ashford might have higher potential, upside or whatever. He's a better athlete, but Peyton Thorne's been a good, serviceable college football starting quarterback in the Power 5. Like, I would, maybe not good, but he's been serviceable. Like, this isn't Grayson Lambert coming in here. Like, it's like, oh, the guy that was bad at Virginia is going to come into Georgia and be good? Like, no, he's not. So, he won a lot of games, but, it's skewed. He had the hell of a game versus South Carolina, though. It still holds the NCAA record. But you look at Michigan's what Auburn's got in the quarterback room. It's like, I don't think Peyton Thorne's the worst move by any means.
That's fair, Matt Green. Let's move quickly to let's play. Is this quarterback a quarterback, or is this player a quarterback, and a real quarterback at Oklahoma State? Have you looked at this yet?
Oh man, I have not looked at this.
Oh, this is going to be a fun game then.
Is this an indictment on my knowledge though? If I don't know this,
you got to be a real sicko to know this off the top of your head in mid-May, early May, 2023. Matt Green, I think this is going to be fun. So all you have to do for this game, you have to tell me yes or no, current Oklahoma State quarterback. And then if you don't think he's a current Oklahoma State quarterback, do you think he's real? Do you think he's a real quarterback in college football?
Or are you just making names up?
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, interesting game.
All right, are you ready?
Let's do it.
Peyton Thompson.
That sounds real.
Okay. Is he?
I'll say he's on Oklahoma
Cowboy?
State. Yeah.
You are correct. He is
There
an
we go.
Oklahoma State Cowboy. And I would encourage you to keep track of these names, or the numbers here. Number 2, Alan Bowman.
Yeah, definitely.
Is he an Oklahoma State Cowboy, or is he another team?
I would say yes, Oklahoma State.
Okay.
That name sounds familiar.
Is he the current starter at Oklahoma State coming out of spring ball?
Hey, who knows who's the starter at this point? It's open competition.
It's Alan Bowman, who has been
See?
everywhere. Texas Tech is where he was awesome a couple years ago. Then he was backing up. He was third string with Michigan last year. Like, Alan Bowman's been all over the
You're
place.
generous with the word awesome.
I mean, he had a really, really big year. I mean, look at his Texas Tech numbers from like 3 years ago. Alan Bowman was lights out in Lubbock just a few short years ago. Garrett Rangel.
You can't make a name up like that. So I'm definitely saying he plays for Oklahoma State.
All right. You are correct. So we're at 4. Or 3, excuse me.
I only know one more, so I'm hoping it's coming. Thought I knew
Zane
one.
Flores.
I'm going to say you made up that name.
Didn't make it up. He's a freshman at Oklahoma State right now as a quarterback.
Wow. So that's 5?
That's 4.
That's 4.
5. Gunnar Gundy.
Gunnar Gundy was the one I knew. I was like, that's an Oklahoma State quarterback right there.
They have 5 quarterbacks, and the names are preposterous. Like, you got a Gundy in there. You got an Alan Bowman. Like, this is the weirdest quarterback room. So I'm just, like, getting ready for this summer, Matt Green, and because I'm a huge dork, I'm, like, memorizing different depth charts and, like, with all the transfer stuff. So I'm going through, taking notes, and I'm like, that can't be right. Who has 5 quarterbacks in the portal era in college football, and none of them are good? Like, they have 5 different quarterbacks, and it's just like you don't feel good about anybody. Like, this is, oof.
You know who, Mike Gundy to me, he seems like a lower ceiling version of Jim Boeheim. It's like, because Syracuse won a national championship, played for at least one more while he was there, but he's obviously the coach for like 40 years. Like, how long has Syracuse just been kind of whatever? Like, since that year they were the 1 seed, right, with Tyler Ennis. What was it, like 12 years ago? Like, that was a while back, and they've been kind of a mediocre program for a while. They had that one Final Four run as like a 10 seed or something, but they've been kind of mediocre for a while. But it's like, he's their guy, and they're never going to turn on him. It's like, you're here as long as you want to be here. And I feel like Mike Gundy, I don't know, they don't feel like they're in a very good spot right now, especially like with Oklahoma leaving. Now it's like the Oklahoma game was like, that was the national stage you could guarantee Oklahoma State was going to be on, and like you could play against this huge brand. Now, if you're not playing Oklahoma anymore, I don't know. Like, they just feel like they're kind of on the decline. And they had some great years, like a lot of top 10, top 15 finishes, and like made Oklahoma State relevant, but on like a national level. But I don't know. It feels like they've peaked, and now it's like, Mike Gundy, it's just, you're here as long as you want to be here, but I don't know. I don't like how the spot Oklahoma State's in right now as a program.
I would also love to get an Oklahoma State historian to come on the pod and explain to me why they've always been such a limited program in terms of resources. Like, they are I think they have the worst NIL situation of any Power 5 school. I remember reading that a couple months ago, where it's like, they're just lagging in those areas, and that's why all these dudes have entered the portal and lost a lot of guys. And like, you remember Jimmy Johnson, like, he was told decades ago, like, he had to get out of Oklahoma State, where it was like, you've reached the top you can go there, you can't win it. He goes to Miami and wins big. I don't understand why Norman, Oklahoma is able to just be this juggernaut and like be a top 10 program year over year, and Oklahoma State, where they've had the Barry Sanders of the world, they've had first round picks, they've had talent in the building. Seems like a big school. You got T. Boone Pickens. I feel like their enrollment's pretty high. I don't understand why there's such a disparity between Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, and why they can't be a perennial power in college football and college sports as a whole. I don't understand why
I mean, I do understand why they can't be a powerhouse per se, but like why it's just such a night and day difference between Oklahoma. Yeah, I that is an interesting point. I mean, I will say, knowing nothing about the geography of the state of Oklahoma, like I have no idea what Norman and Oklahoma or in Stillwater have. Yeah. Still, I do know. I definitely know the city. Come on, I've been playing NCAA football for too long. But yeah, so I have no idea like what kind of towns those are. Like, is one of them on a lake? Like, I have no idea. So. Norman could be a mini version of like Knoxville for all I know, and it's like I would have no idea. So yeah. I can't speak to what the towns have to offer. But I agree. I think T. Boone Pickens though was kind of like their only one. I mean he kind of like provided everything they had. So I think he brought them into the 21st century. Because I mean before Gundy was the coach. I mean, who was the coach before Gundy? Do you know that off the top of your head? I mean, he's like 05, 06, I think he's been there.
Oh, Les Miles, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, and they weren't even really good. He just lucks into the LSU job, basically. So, yeah, I mean, they were fine before that, but they felt like a real bottom feeder. Like the Bedlam was not a competitive rivalry. I think Oklahoma still kind of owns it, like 8 of the last 9 or something like that, but they're at least playing a lot more competitive games, and Oklahoma State's definitely won some in the last 10, 15 years.
I just think it's weird. I'd love to give it an Oklahoma State person, like a deep Oklahoma State knower, to be like, explain to me like I'm 5, like why the gap is so big between you and Oklahoma. Because I don't get it. I really don't get it. What else I don't get is Justin Blaylock is now a Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket, Matt Green.
Hold on, before you get into that, I will just say one little just quick Wikipedia fact. Stillwater, Oklahoma has 48,000 people, whereas Norman has 128,000 people.
Interesting.
It's roughly 3 times bigger of city, but obviously very minimal knowledge. That just tells you how many people and really nothing else. But
not really big. Very college town, very deserted a little bit. But Blaylock entering the portal, not a lot of spots. He flashed a little bit, was a fun prospect for a couple of years. He's a big what if for Georgia. Georgia fans felt pretty highly of him. And then A.D. Mitchell, obviously, out the door to Texas earlier this offseason, Matt Green. But this is a two-parter for you. The first part, Justin Blaylock to Georgia Tech. What are the Jackets getting in Blaylock? And did you hope to see him back for Georgia for one more go around here and see if he could have cracked the rotation, especially if injuries came out? Did he have a path to playing time in Athens this fall?
Probably not. I mean, not more than he already had. Like, he's probably the 6th, 7th guy on the depth chart, maybe. Like in 2019, as a true freshman, like same year as Pickens, like there was a bunch of injuries that year, and he really stepped up. So he was a playmaker, kind of returning punts. Like he was a tough kind of like slot receiver, definitely not a burner. Obviously I think he had that one long catch against Auburn, as a true freshman. But he was a fine player. Like he just the SEC Championship 2019 versus Joe Burrow and LSU, he tore his ACL in that game. So after like a really like solid freshman year, tears his ACL in the SEC Championship, and then I want to say like the very next season, like 3 weeks before the season started or something, tore his ACL, or maybe the other ACL, maybe the same one again. Like so many injuries while I was at Georgia. He's one of those guys like that. I don't know if you remember when AJ Green was being recruited. Like AJ Green only visited Georgia. Like he committed to Georgia. Like it was the one school he visited. He was like fell in love and like didn't even talk to like other coaches. It was just like weird how like sold on Georgia he was. I feel like Dominick Blaylock was kind of one of those guys. So, like, from that perspective as a fan, like, as a sophomore, I think he committed as, like, a big-time 5-star. And I think he wasn't quite as highly rated, like, by the time the senior year rolled around. But he was a good player, just kind of, a career just kind of riddled with injuries. Had a big-time third down catch at some point in that Ohio State game that I remember being kind of clutch at the time. So, he's had some plays here and there. But, yeah, I mean, pretty much after the 2019 season, it's either been injuries or just being kind of buried on a pretty solid Georgia receiver depth chart. Because I think Georgia's like 5-6 deep with just like good receivers, I think, and that's kind of what they've been. That's kind of what they were like a year ago too. Like they don't really have that star, but just a lot of good receivers.
It's also going to be interesting to see who starts for Tech at receiver. They have a lot of transfers. They get Abdul Janae, Chase Lane, Christian Leary. Obviously, you get DJ Moore back. You get Malik Rutherford. But I'm curious to see who is there. And it looks like Haynes King's not going to be starting. It looks like Zach Pyron is going to be QB1 out of spring, which is fascinating.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I mean, I would assume a guy like a place like Georgia Tech, like Blaylock's got to come in and be probably one of their best options at the very least. So yeah, at this point, like, because you were talking about like Tennessee would never, no players transferring from Tennessee to Vanderbilt.
No,
that is what this feels like though. Like if a player transfers from Tennessee to Vanderbilt, do you hate that guy? Like, we don't know any of these people, so we don't want to, like, hate them personally. But as a Georgia fan, like, you hate Trey Matthews, right? Georgia, played at Georgia as a freshman, goes to Auburn, and it's like, forget this guy, So it's like Jermaine Burton goes to Alabama, basically our biggest kind of rival on the national stage right now. It's like as a fan, you're able to kind of like, oh, no, he's the enemy now, like, whatever.
Especially after winning the national title. That was just weird. Burton doing it after winning the national title is just strange.
It definitely is. And I mean, other than play with Bryce Young, you can't necessarily hate on that decision. But with Dominick Blaylock, it's kind of like, you go down to Georgia Southern. Like, yeah, get some reps, man. Maybe you have a good season and you can get to the league or something. You're not even like where Georgia and Georgia Tech are as programs right now. It's like,
did you say Georgia Southern, by the way? Was that a little slip there?
No, I mean I'm saying because it feels like the equivalent of just like if a guy goes down to Southern, you're like you don't dislike him. You're like, yeah, you aren't getting any playing time here. Go get some reps there. Like that's how Georgia Tech feels right now. It's not transferring to Auburn. It's not transferring to even as South Carolina, like a rival in the East that's like we're clearly better than. Like Georgia Tech is just kind of like, that's not really doing anything. I hope you have a good season, and we hope you don't play well on the Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's like one of those, you don't hate them. You just are like, it does annoy you more as a fan. That would bother me if like someone went to Vandy and was like a big time player. It wouldn't even be Vandy. Probably the equivalent for Tennessee would be like that would actually draw some ire because Henry To'oTo'o was hated by Tennessee fans for many years.
See, that's a good example because I mean he's part of the enemy at that point. Like so, like I think JJ Green also a few years ago went from Georgia to Georgia Tech because you know what that transition is. Like the Tennessee to Vanderbilt transition, like you're not going there because you're like, oh, I need more playing. I'm going to show them like I can be the guy or something. I mean, maybe as a person you do have that kind of chip on your shoulder, of course, but like you're on a different like you're different caliber of player. Like and you've kind of recognized that, okay, I need to go to like a lower caliber school so I can actually get some playing time. Like it's not like going to the enemy, like Brenton Cox going to Florida or something like that.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And then you have one quick thing, some rat poison for Kirby because Kirby's done, and Britt Hubbs on VolQuest made a really good point about this week on the pod, that like Kirby deserves credit for being able to instill this absolute lie to these Georgia players where Nolan Smith the whole year can be like, no one believed in us. They thought we were going 7-5. And like the whole team really had that idea of like they took things for like not like it's so hard to instill the most talented team that's coming off a national championship to be like, No one believes that y'all can go back-to-back. No one believes that y'all are going to be just as good as you were a year ago. They don't even see you going to the SEC title game this year. They don't even see you beating Florida. They don't see you beating Tennessee, whatever.
I would say the biggest advantage, not to cut you off in the middle, I would say the biggest advantage this past team had was they lost so much from the defense. So it was so much new blood. And then like the offense kind of being told, well, the defense is the only reason y'all won a national championship. So it's like you got the new unproven defensive players like coming in with a chip. The returning offensive players already having a chip. It's like the motivation was already there. And Kirby, he learned from Saban. I think this is what Saban is the GOAT. This is why he's the GOAT. Like I've always said, if I have one game, I need a coach to win one game, I'm taking Urban Meyer. Like Urban Meyer, I think, is that elite of a coach for one game. But Nick Saban, it's the week in, week out. Like we are going to play to our standard every single game. Like there are no hiccups. Like the games Alabama loses are when when Chad Kelly throws off his back foot into double coverage and it bounces off the dude's helmet and he returns it and he takes it all the way like 50 yards for a touchdown. The kick six. It's like the Steven Garcia South Carolina game. It's like the Hendon Hooker game last year. It's like a perfect storm of like a team needed every single thing to go right for them to finally beat Alabama. It's like Ohio State, Urban Meyer would just have those games where it's just like, wait, Iowa? What, Purdue? What happened? So I feel like that's the difference. And I feel like with Nick Saban, it was always like they're not the defending national champions. No one's taking that national championship from the 2021 team. You're a new team. You haven't accomplished anything. You have to go win it too, So I feel like that was just that whole messaging. I feel like that's the biggest thing that Kirby got from Saban.
Well, I don't know if you saw what a certain analyst said about Texas and the talented roster. Did you see this, Matt Green?
What's that?
So I want to pull up the exact quote here. But Texas, being the most talented roster in college football this year, came up. And I want to see Urban Meyer. Speaking of Urban Meyer, he said, "quote the Horns have the best roster in college football." And my head immediately went to, "You've got to be kidding me! Come on, Urban! Don't throw that out there because that is the kind of stuff that Kirby is smacking on that board from now up until this fall. Is just, oh, we don't even have the best." Roster in college football anymore. It's actually Texas. Texas is the one with the best roster in college football. And like I don't even really disagree that strongly. Like when you go through the Texas roster, like they really are loaded at just about every spot. Like that makes when they go 8-4 this year hurt that much more when you're like, this roster is unbelievably talented with blue chippers everywhere. And like the QB room of Quinn and Arch is stupid. Like, that is a stupidly talented. And Malik Murphy. Like, that's a pretty amazing trio. I understand that Brock and company is solid. But, like, upside-wise, I would say Texas quarterback room is higher upside than...
Yeah, but, in terms of what that means for, like, in terms of projecting success, like, a loaded quarterback room... That's sometimes the kiss of death, You choose the wrong one, like who knows what it does to the program, like that whole thing. Like then two guys end up transferring. Like that's what happens at a lot of schools. Like there's not a lot of scenarios of Georgia, like what's happening at Georgia, where Carson Beck waits 3 years, and then Brock Vandegrift waits 2 years, and then Gunnar Stockton's waiting multiple years. Like. Usually guys want to play, especially if they think they're really good players. And, you got 2 5-stars and Malik, I'm blanking on his name right now. Malik Murphy.
You got 3 5-stars.
3 5-stars just in the quarterback room?
Yeah.
Was Murphy a 5-star?
And Murphy. I'm pretty sure Murphy was too.
Okay.
I'm pretty certain.
But, you have 2, guys that were, the number 1 quarterback in the country. Well, I guess there's debate, I guess, where Arch was by the end of it. But he's up there, top 5 player in the country, super highly touted guys. So Texas obviously is going to have a loaded roster, but that's just one of those things. It does feel like, okay, now, it's not like the pressure.
Too. I'm looking at it. He was a 5-star too. Yeah,
okay.
All 3 were.
It's not like the pressure isn't already on Texas every single year to win or or it's hot seat talk. But I feel like this just cranks it up even more. Like Urban Meyer knows what he's talking about. He watches Big Noon, or he's on the Big Noon kickoff. Like he watches our games, and he's saying we got the best team in college football.
Can Urban coach Texas this year? How about that? Let Urban just do a 1 year at Texas to see, can he win a title with this Texas team, the most talented team in college football? Just give Urban the team this year.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that.
But if you gave, serious question, if you gave Texas Urban for this year with this roster, Matt Green, their receiver
hard to say. He always had a dual threat as the quarterback, though. Like Ewers isn't necessarily that guy. Like maybe he could do something, but this doesn't feel like an Urban team. I don't see Percy Harvin and Chris Rainey and Jeff Demps.
Xavier Worthy. They have a Xavier Worthy. Isaiah Nair, who missed all of last year, who Tennessee really wanted the Wyoming transfer, Speedster. He tore his ACL before the season started. Really good player. Was maybe the most highly sought-after wide receiver in the portal last year. He's healthy. He's not even starting. You look at that. It's A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, who's a dude, and Jordan Whittington, also a dude. They are loaded. There is no reason Quinn Ewers should not be a Heisman finalist and that this offense doesn't just put up bonker stats. Like, I mean, I cannot wait for Bama, Texas, because Texas goes to Bama this time. Whoo, the talent's there. The offensive firepower's there. This is a big year for Texas. This is a big year. And
I'd say it's massive.
Good that they have this kind of, I don't know if they want that kind of hype of like everyone talking all summer like they actually have the best. They've assembled the best roster in college football. That's a lot of pressure.
It's too early. That's the problem with having to play Alabama in the regular season. It's like those teams. It's like sometimes they peak too early. Like and they're not ready for after they beat Bama. It's like Tennessee saw it last year, right? You beat Bama. It's like that felt like the climax of the season. It's like wait, we got to play like another month or so of games. Like you want to beat Bama in the season finale. So that's the only time you have to. You don't have to play them again or something. Like Auburn figured it out. Like just all you have to do is just win the very last second of the game, and just spoil their undefeated season, and then they're out of it. So it's tough when you got them week 3. Like the hype that Texas is just one of those teams, right? Texas and probably Miami. Every time they win, it's like Texas is back. Miami is back. Like Bama is back. They were one of those. I remember Brody Crowell being on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Bama is back. It's like they fired Mike Shula the next season. It's like they were good that year, but I don't know. They're just those certain brands that just have that level of pressure, and Texas is one of them. So if they go into Bryant-Denny and win week 2, oh my God, the Texas is back talk. This is the year for Texas. It's just going to be. They're going to be top 5. They might even be number 1 if they beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. So like that feels like way too early to have that much hype with someone that's like as inexperienced as Texas. You know what I'm saying? Like, can they handle being ranked top 3 from September 15th till the rest of the season? You know, we'll see. They are super talented this year.
That is true, and it's going to be fascinating to see what happens here. So, Texas is going to be fun. Speaking of fun, SEC over-unders came out courtesy of DraftKings, Matt Green. There were some really interesting numbers thrown out here. And we're not going to go one by one. We're going to bounce around here a little bit. But I think some of my stuff might surprise you, and I think you might surprise me with some of your answers here. But I want to start with, what is the one you agree with most when you saw this number? And they were for you. They're all halves, which is a big pet peeve of yours.
There we go.
They're all halves. What jumped out to you the most that you agreed with, where you saw that and you're like, that's exactly where it should be?
Well, I think Georgia for sure. Just because of the schedule, it's like, is this team going to go undefeated or are they going to lose one game? It feels like the only options. It doesn't feel like it feels like you'd have to hunt for 2 losses on this schedule. For one, how good Georgia should be again in 2023, but the schedule is just so weak.
If you were going to make the case for Georgia not to, like, I guess it's Tennessee is number 1 on that list.
I think it's an intangible case. I think that's the only thing. It's just like, they're not going to go undefeated again. Like that's the logic. It's like they're going to go undefeated for a 3rd straight regular season.
They absolutely could, though.
But they definitely could, and it's just because being undefeated doesn't mean that much. Like strength of schedule, like Cincinnati went undefeated. Like, okay, half the SEC West could have gone undefeated with Cincinnati's schedule that year. You know, so it's like Cincinnati was a good team, but schedule is huge. So obviously, I think we don't know. We can never predict perfectly college football. So there's going to be a team or two. Like you saw Arkansas kind of break through and be like a big time nationally ranked game for Georgia in 2021. Like Tennessee, no one saw that being the number one team in the country coming to Athens when you were looking in the preseason magazines last year. So there's going to be someone that emerges
I did say 10-2 before the year. I did.
But
call,
did you thought they were going to be number one coming into Athens?
With the schedule, did I say that they would split Georgia and Alabama?
You did literally say
South
they
Carolina.
would.
Yeah,
you did. That's fair. But so maybe it's Florida, maybe it's Auburn that kind of looks better. Maybe it's Ole Miss that looks better. So it's probably going to be slightly.
Did you say Auburn?
I said maybe Auburn, Florida,
it's Auburn.
Ole Miss.
It's not Florida. It's Auburn because that's on the road. Like you look at this, and even like the maybe flip flops of South Carolina or Kentucky's better. Guess what? You get them both at home. You look at the schedule, and I'm just like, you even get Ole Miss at home. I mean, it's just Mizzou, that house of horrors on the road. Guess what? You get them at home this year. It's just, like you said, you've really got to squint really, really hard to see 2 losses on this regular season schedule. Like, that's the easiest luck. I agree with you. Like, there's just, even if you think Georgia loses 1 regular season game, and if you told me that if I had to put over 50% odds of Georgia dropping 1 of the 2 between Tennessee on the road and Auburn on the road next year, I would take that. I would take that over 50%, that they drop 1 of them. I don't think they drop
and I think
both.
Tennessee is definitely the game anyone would choose if Georgia's going to lose
actually.
1.
Hugh Freeze doing that right out of the gate, like, it's just such an Auburn thing to do because Auburn does this, and it's going to be an early one. Maybe they take them for granted a little bit. Auburn's still got a lot of talent there. They're still right around that blue chip ratio. Hugh Freeze is going to have that offense humming.
But I also feel like it's a Josh Heupel thing. Maybe this is the year they're 7-3 playing Georgia, and then they break through and win, like something like that. You know, they're just a little unpredictable. I don't
even know who's going to be quarterback at that point. Like, it's really hard for me to say because, like, you're going to be surprised at my Tennessee pick here. Like, for what I have with this, because I think it's. I mean, let's just get into that because
I think that's what I was going to say. I think both of those lines are on point with Alabama at 10.5 and Tennessee at 9.5. What were you going to say about Tennessee?
Which way do you think I would go right now on May 9th with that 9.5 line, Matt Green?
It'd be hard to go over for me. Are you going under?
I'm going under.
Being realistic over here.
I'm a realistic fan. Like, I said 10-2, and what have I said all offseason where I'm like, I think the defense is better. There's a lot more talent on that side of the ball. But, like, left tackle is probably going to be John Campbell. Right tackle, they don't have that settled. It's probably going to be Gerald Mincy, who played mostly on the left side all last year. Maybe J.J. Crawford. Like, if the tackles suck, and Joe Milton, who can't move around at any, like, he lost like 10 pounds this spring, but, like, the dude's still a statue. He still prefers to sit in the pocket and wait for guys to get downfield so he can unleash 70-yard bombs when he can, because he's got the strongest arm in college football, and it's not particularly close. But, like, Hendon Hooker did not have the strongest arm. It doesn't matter. He had amazing touch. Like, that kind of strength, it's so silly. It doesn't matter. Like, all these guys.
Hey, if you're throwing to unguarded wide receivers, I mean, how great does your arm strength need to be?
No, but you need touch. You need to be able to have precision. You need to make quick, good decisions. And with Milton, we've seen bad decision after bad decision where it's like, the dude, I can't shake that he ran out of bounds on 4th down against Ole Miss. Like, he didn't know what the clock. Like, it's all the stuff with you had a month to prepare for Clemson. Like, I'm not taking too much out of that. And then you destroyed Vanderbilt on the road. It was Vandy. Like, that's not what's going to tell me whether or not Joe Milton made the leap. Hendon Hooker's not around anymore.
Clemson it's a great sign though. Like, you don't know how much you can take from those bowl games these days with just different players, different distractions, coaches, who knows. With all the transitions and everything, but it's still a good sign. And he played well versus a good Power 5 football team.
Well, here's my thing. I think Joe Milton does not make it through the whole season. So if it's going to be, he's gotten banged up, it might be injury, he might get benched. It's one of the two. I don't think Joe Milton makes it through the whole year without Nico taking over at some point. Nico, my gut tells me he takes over at some point. And at that point, you're probably not looking at a 9 or a 10-win season. Like 9.5 is just too high. I don't see double-digit wins in the regular season for this Tennessee team. I would be very, very surprised if they hit that over. I wouldn't do it because they're my team and I'm alum, but I would pound the under right now of like, I don't see it.
That's
They're
why
going
you
to
hedge your bet, man. You know,
I just don't see
You'll be happy if they win more, but you'll make money if they lose.
That's true. But I won't do it. At Florida, guess what they don't do? Win at Florida. Like, it's just something that Tennessee really, really struggles with. They've done it multiple times with the better team. Florida looks awful. We'll get into theirs here. You go to Kentucky. I don't think they'll have any problem there. They always destroy Mizzou. They've scored like a gazillion points up to this point. You got to go to Alabama this time. Georgia's always going to be Georgia. A&M at home will be a big indicator. South Carolina is that close at home. Like, I don't know. This just feels like an 8-4 type year to me, and I don't think that's a disaster for Tennessee if they take that step back. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's some awkwardness.
Can you tell me the quarterback the last time Tennessee beat Florida in Gainesville? Bonus points if you can give me the 2 quarterbacks that played for Florida in this game as well.
It wasn't Dobbs.
No.
Because Dobbs should have done it once. It wasn't Bray.
How much time am I giving you? Clock's ticking.
Was it Eric Ainge?
That is incorrect. Close, though.
Was it Casey
Clausen?
Clausen?
Go back to Casey Clausen, 2003.
I was like, was it really Casey Clausen? Oh, my God.
For bonus points, can you give me the 2 Florida players? One eventually transferred, and the other was a true freshman.
Chris Leak, was he the true freshman?
That is correct.
And the other one transferred.
I know who you're gonna say.
Not Brock Berlin.
It's not Brock Berlin.
Not Rex Grossman. Not Sexy Rexy.
Ended up at Furman.
I can like see him.
It is Ingle Martin.
Ingle Martin.
So yeah, he who knows? That may have been the day that Chris Leak became the full-time starter, because I know he took over at some point, like early mid freshman year, and was a starter, and then won a national championship. You gotta give him credit for that. But I feel like Tim Tebow was the most impactful backup quarterback in NCAA history.
Well, there you go. So like I said, I'll believe when I see it that they go down and win in Gainesville, even against a terrible, terrible Florida team, Matt Green. I think that stands out to us, right? 5.5, second worst win total odds in the SEC next year, Matt Green. That kind of just blew me away to see it. Like, I'm betting on it, but to see it and to see them right there with Vanderbilt with 3.5.
That's why I don't know if I'm betting on it. Are you saying under at least?
I think I'm saying under. I think it's 5-7. I could see easily 5-7.
I don't know. I don't see Florida going 5-7. Like, because last year, obviously, what were they, 6-6 last year?
Yes, and I think they're worse.
It's not like Anthony Richardson was good, though. You know what I mean? Like, they lost the 4th pick in the draft, but it's like, did he make their team better? Like, I really don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe they were a 3-win team, and Anthony Richardson made him a 6-win team. But
all right, well,
like, you saw the Kentucky game where he basically like gave the game away. Like, one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen. So, like, I don't know. I'm not high on Graham Mertz by any means, but like, Anthony Richardson, it's not going to be like that hard to replace that production or even improve that production.
Graham Mertz is just going to be Graham Mertz is not a good quarterback.
And they had a pretty good running game last year too. So there's some young running backs that are pretty good.
Here's their schedule, Matt Green. At Utah, like, count these losses for me. Can you count these real quick?
Yeah.
All right, Utah.
That's 1.
Kentucky.
2.
That's on the road. At South Carolina.
That's 3. You're counting that as an automatic loss?
Yeah.
Okay.
Georgia, neutral site.
That's 4.
At LSU.
That's 5.
Florida State at home.
That's 6.
So then you have the toss-ups at Mizzou, Tennessee at home, and Arkansas at home to prevent you from going 5-7.
So I'm interested. I wouldn't just say at South Carolina. I wouldn't count that as one of their automatic losses. I would count going honestly Tennessee. Other than the fact that we just said they haven't won since 2003, like
20 years.
So I guess that's the only thing that makes it a toss-up game, and we can't necessarily ignore going to the Swamp. While their record is still good too, it's like maybe they haven't given up on the season. The place will still be loud at that point in the season. But yeah, that's a lot of toss-up games. I think there's probably only about 3 guaranteed wins on that schedule, obviously, and potentially 2 out of conference losses this year.
Yeah, I just think they're going to be really bad. But does he make it? Does Billy Napier get a year 3 if they go 4-8 or 5-7? Is that still guaranteed?
I mean, they definitely shouldn't fire him. It's got to be pretty bad. Like, I mean, there's also like there's
what
context.
If he goes 0 against Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, and South Carolina? What if he goes 0-4 against the big?
I mean, but it depends on what you do in the other games. I mean, because if you're 8-4 and lose those 4, it's like that's a pretty damn good season.
They're not doing that and then beating
the schedule
LSU
is also
and Florida State and Utah.
No, for sure. So I mean, that's the big. I mean, it's the rivals first of all. Like, those are the ones that just kind of emotionally make the decisions in the fan base. It's like it's getting embarrassed in the cocktail party, like Mark Richt did. It's like, okay, we gotta get rid of this guy. So obviously, like you lose to Georgia, LSU, Florida State, Tennessee, or something like that's big. But I mean, it's a tough schedule. So he just did not inherit the best program, and so I don't think he's going to be penalized for them like not being that good in year 2. So I mean, it's also like I was going to say, like context matters. Like if they're losing 41-10 and like getting shut out or something, like things like that, because Florida has pride in that not getting shut out streak they got going since like the 80s.
Remember they kicked the field goal against Oregon State late.
They scored right at the end against Georgia, I think 2017 or something to not get shut out. But so I don't know. So it's kind of like if you're fighting, losing close games, like that's a tough schedule. So if they lose 6-7 games, I mean it's not going to be that surprising. Like I would not be surprised. I mean, if we look up at the end of the year and they have 5 top 15 opponents on their schedule, like it's a big time schedule. So there's definitely some context.
For sure. I would say my lock though, Matt Green, over on LSU 9.5.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That's low.
It makes sense though. Because I don't think you could have put it at 10.5.
Why?
Because 10-2 feels like a very likely scenario. Like obviously we feel like they're better than Alabama right now, but like let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Like the last game they played at A&M, like kind of just kind of fell apart at the end of the last season. Obviously the Georgia game blown out. They weren't really expected. They probably competed a little better than expected, honestly, in that game. And then I can't remember the bowl game. Who'd they play in the bowl? Was it like – I feel like it was a big brand name, but I'll try to pull that up. But
I was going to say Oklahoma State or Notre Dame, but I think they played each other. Who did LSU play in their bowl game?
But I don't know. They're not a guaranteed just like pencil them in like, oh, Bama's washed, LSU's taking over the SEC West. Like it's definitely not that simple. And the SEC West – there's a lot of landmines on that schedule. Like,
no,
just
here's the thing, Matt Green. You look at their schedule. Here's the thing. LSU is going to be favored in every single game on their schedule in 2023. They are going to
LSU beat Purdue 63-7 in the Citrus Bowl.
Like at the Florida State neutral site, they'll be favored in that one. That's a toss-up, but I still think LSU wins that one. I think they lose back-to-back to Florida State there. At Ole Miss. Maybe feisty, but I think they should win there. Arkansas at home, they should win there.
Just
Auburn at
skimming
home.
right over Stark Vegas over
They're
here
not
at
losing
Mississippi State.
Yeah, they're not.
And Mississippi State, man, they sneak up on people. They They basically, not to get into Mississippi State just yet, but like they're one of those teams that's just underestimated every single year. So it's like they're gonna win some games. I don't know if it's the LSU game, but They're gonna, especially at home, like they're gonna get somebody. They always do.
They do. I just don't think it's LSU. I would pound the over there. I would be very surprised if LSU does not win at minimum 10 regular season games next year. I'm ready to unveil my national title pick for next year, Mac.
Vegas is pretty high on Florida State though, right?
Yeah.
Like opening with Florida State is not basically on the road in Orlando. I would imagine it's probably a better Florida State crowd, but I mean honestly, it might be 50-50.
LSU travels well, I think
for sure.
Yeah.
So, because it would be terrible to play that game in Tallahassee in Doak Campbell Stadium, let's play in Camping World Stadium. But so that's not an easy way to open. So many of these SEC teams, it's like roughly 4 guaranteed wins at a conference. You know what I mean? Like there's the occasional neutral site. Like there's more this year probably than most years, I would say, with like Alabama and Florida, obviously, and LSU. But most SEC teams have a lot of built-in wins at a conference. And this LSU schedule, I mean, with Florida State as one of those games, like that makes it a little more tough.
My gut tells me that LSU, my preseason title pick is LSU Ohio State in the national title game.
Oh, man. Just putting it out there.
Yeah. I think that's
we'll see. I won't hold you to that. It'll come around in August. We'll make our official picks at some point. But I mean, I think LSU is going to be really good this year for sure. So 9.5, I'm pounding 9.5. 9.5 seems easy for sure. I would think 10.5 might be a more interesting line because you're talking about them being a national champion right now. Like 10 or is the 10 or 11 team seems like probably where this 10 or 11 win team, probably where this line should be.
Can I also just say, like, we don't have to spend more than 30 seconds on this, but David Pollock saying that Carson Beck's going to be better than Stetson Bennett and just have a better season next year than Stetson Bennett and be a Heisman finalist. None of that's happening. Georgia's not going to be in any important games outside of the Tennessee game. Like, it's not happening. And Stetson Bennett maybe had one of the best individual quarterback seasons of any Georgia quarterback ever last year. Moving on from Monken, like, it's not happening. I think Carson Beck's going to be good, but, like, he's not going to be a Heisman finalist. Go ahead and cancel that out. Like, no chance of that. And also, he's not having a better season than what Stetson did last year. Stetson, if you go through his numbers last year and what Georgia's like, it's just, I don't think they can.
Well, in the biggest games, Stetson is obviously at his best. Like, people talked about those numbers constantly.
And he was a great narrative guy. Like, you need a narrative for the Heisman.
For sure. But also, the Ohio State and the TCU game aren't on that Heisman resume either. So, as his Heisman resume, it's like, it was a big narrative thing. Like, it was Georgia getting a guy in. He was the quarterback on the best team. He was a really good player and like a dynamic player. Like, I feel like the way he's talked about is
got launched his Heisman candidacy because remember Hendon Hooker was
the Oregon game. I think definitely put it on like early on.
But I think
it kind of faded away.
Really pushed him. Like the doing the phone call stuff and just how well he played in that game. I think that made it.
Well, and let's be honest, it was like process of elimination kind of at one point. It was like there's a lot of just Hendon Hooker getting hurt, Blake Corum getting hurt, like Caleb Williams obviously got blown out, but he still won the award. Like there was a lot of guys that I don't know, just Bryce Young didn't have his Heisman moments or anything. Like no one thinks Stetson Bennett is better than Bryce Young. Like would you say Stetson Bennett was better in 2022 than Bryce Young was?
No.
Like no. Probably not. So that's the only thing. Like as good as Stetson Bennett was, like he was a really good player, but I can't really disagree that strongly. I think the Monken thing is probably your best point, but if you look at the position like Carson Beck, I think he's just a more traditional like quarterback that's got a stronger, more NFL type prototype arm that if things are on schedule, which if Georgia got the best offensive line in the country and best tight end room and deep wide receiver group, deep running back group, like they're going to put the quarterback in a position to succeed, and he might not need to do the things that Stetson had to do with kind of like things break down and he makes some plays with his legs. Like I don't think it's outlandish to say Carson Beck could be better than what Stetson Bennett was. But I do agree with you on the Heisman thing because Stetson, I honestly think would have won the Heisman had Georgia padded his stats a little more. Like if they actually took, I mean, you just look at his raw stats just in general. Like I talked about, back at the time how he just kind of had an unlucky streak with like 20, 30-yard passes. Guy gets tackled down at the 2, down at the 1. A lot of those kind of big plays. I think McIntosh had like a 90-yard catch or something against Georgia Tech where he got tackled at the 1. So it was like a lot of that kind of stuff seemed to happen. But you also just, if Georgia was trying to like get him 3 or 4 more touchdowns like over the course of the year, like he could have had like a 30-touchdown type season, and the narrative was just so strong, number 1 quarter. Like, there's a chance he could have won the damn award, but his stats were not where they should have been. And I think that's what it's going to be for Carson Beck, too. Like, not only, like, because we're probably going to be blowing teams out, but also, like, maybe you're keeping an eye on that quarterback room. Like, let's get Brock Vandagriff some early third quarter reps because we're up 4 touchdowns right now. And it might be a little early to bench the starters, but we want everybody to get some playing time. Like, you see, it doesn't seem like Georgia, like Brock Bowers seems like the best Heisman candidate, but even him on Georgia, like it doesn't feel like Georgia really just gives their best player enough touches, enough stats to like really to consistently get in like the Heisman conversation. So like Bowers will have that like preseason talk, like, oh, tight end, maybe he could be the first or whatever. I assume no tight end's ever been a finalist, right? I don't remember one, but I think Bowers is actually that level of like elite player. But
was Kyle Pitts a finalist? No, I guess it came.
No, because Trask was. Because Pitts missed a couple games. I was in the Kyle Pitts Heisman finalist camp for sure. Yeah. But I don't know. So Beck, it just has the advantage of being the quarterback on what could definitely be the number 1 team. But how many of those games is he going to put up actual Heisman stats, or are they just going to be running the ball for the 3rd and 4th quarter?
Yeah, and I think you're going to see a lot of that. Next year.
But don't say it's because of Monken though, because Bobo could come in and this Georgia offense could be just as good.
Do you expect that though?
I mean, do I expect Georgia's offense to average like 40 points a game? Like, yeah, honestly, why would you not?
Do you think it's going to look just as seamless? Do you think it's going to look just as innovative, just as fun?
But did you think Georgia's offense was seamless last year?
Yeah.
Like you had the 16-6 game against Kentucky. Like you had the 23-21 or whatever it was against Missouri. Like,
are you laying the groundwork to just be like, actually, Mike Bobo an upgrade over Todd Monken? Is that what we're getting here?
If you look at what
cancel out Colorado
I'm pretty sure
State, cancel out South Carolina, cancel out Auburn. Let's go back to 2013, and Mike Bobo was cooking with something there.
Hey man, 2014, Bobo's team averaged more points per game than Georgia did last year in 2022 in this environment. Like
10 years matters,
but people are scoring way more points now than they were 10 years ago. Is what I'm saying.
Wasn't scoring points 2 years ago. Mike Bobo and the Auburn Tigers.
Because it's the Auburn Tigers.
We keep saying that.
He's playing
Rams.
He's playing with the
South Carolina Gamecocks.
You're making my point for me. He's playing with the Georgia Bulldogs talent right now. It's a Ferrari versus a Volkswagen Beetle, man. It's not even close. So
yeah, noted scrub programs, the South Carolina Gamecocks and Auburn Tigers.
I mean, compared to what Georgia is, yes, they are a scrub program.
What?
The years that Mike Bobo was at Auburn, it's a dumpster fire. Like South Carolina's.
Josh Heupel went into a dumpster fire right away at Tennessee. 30 players in the portal, had nothing at quarterback.
I would say
you got to turn chicken blank into.
But if we're talking about Jim Chaney as an OC, are we going to cite his Jeremy Pruitt years?
Yeah.
Like no, like that's not the most relevant sample of the guy's career.
That was the last thing we saw. That was terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
Awful.
And he was at a lot of other places with Drew Brees, with Jake Fromm, with all kinds of Eric Ainge the first time around in Tennessee. Like he had all kinds of success.
Right now? Is he calling any more offenses, or anyone bringing?
But I'm saying you're not going to judge his career based on the worst head coach he coached under. That's all I'm saying. Like Mike Bobo under Brian Harsin and Will Muschamp, like those were not good programs. They didn't have good players.
I disagree. Will Muschamp was recruiting really well. There were good players at South Carolina.
On the defense, there were some good players. South Carolina
had good players.
Did they?
Yeah, it was the Gus Malzahn players. It wasn't even Brian Harsin's guys. It was Gus's guys.
Who were those good players that came out of Auburn on those?
Well, now I got to go back. But Matt Green, don't do this. Bo Nix immediately goes to Oregon. Is great.
Hey, he's
couldn't do
playing
anything on a
he's
bow.
playing the Pac-12 against soft competition.
You're making excuses.
No, I think Bo Nix. That's the best point. I think is Bo Nix. He was also playing a different system like every year, but Bo Nix definitely was not good under Bobo. But he was also underwhelming under other guys at Auburn too. So he seemed to figure it out last year at Oregon. But no, I'll give you that point for sure. But I don't
just want
think
Georgia fans to admit that there's a possibility Bobo sucks this year. Just say that there's a possibility that there's a huge downgrade from
I don't think there's a possibility that anything about Georgia's team sucks, though. I mean, that's the thing. There's just a minimum floor of just like where Georgia's at right now. So, like, I remember hearing like Chris Marler on one of those SEC podcasts talking about just really hedging his bet with the Bobo stuff because it's like it's a terrible OC hire, but Georgia's so good that it doesn't matter and they'll be great with him. And it's like, well, if they're really good in scoring points with him, then it wasn't a terrible hire. So, like, you can say, like, oh, they could have gone out and got a sexier name. They could have gotten the best name in the business or whatever. But if the offense is working and Georgia continues to win at the same level as they were under Monken, then it's a success. So I don't think it's like outlandish to think Georgia could still have. I mean, they didn't have the number one offense in college football last year. You know what I mean? They had a top 5, top 10 offense, like big time offense for sure. Like look at the cupboard right now. Like, I mean, it's going to be hard almost for that team to not have a top 5, top 10 offense, other than if statistically they're just up 31-10 on teams in the fourth quarter and they're just kind of running the ball out, because we've seen Georgia do a lot of that type of stuff, and maybe they're not actually putting up the points, like putting up the stats, but they are just like efficiently, just because it kind of like that Tennessee game last year, like. The offense scored, what is it, 27? Was that the final score? 27-13?
Yeah.
And so it's like, it felt like when the game was like in the balance, that offense was like moving. But it was like once Georgia kind of figured out, I think we have enough points and they're not going to be able to come back on us.
That's enough.
They kind of parked the bus point. No, I'm just saying you see Georgia do that sort of thing in games more than like any other program. Like you see Ohio State's throwing 50-yard touchdown passes up 65-7 against Maryland. Like you just see teams all over the country. I think.
I mean, we were doing that to Mizzou last year.
I'm saying a lot of people do it. No shade. It's just not really how Georgia does it. And if you're just basing it off like stats versus stats, then they might come up short to what Monken was doing, but still be a really good offense. But I fully expect Georgia to continue to have a really good offense this year.
Well, there you go. We'll see. I think it's just an under-talked about thing that both these powerhouse programs could maybe have made bad offensive coordinator hires this offseason. I think
no, it's definitely possible. Did you have any other of the over-unders you wanted to get to? I just thought it was crazy just looking at the parity. What do we have? 6 teams at 6.5 or something?
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you last.
Or like, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 teams between 7.5 and 6.5.
Yeah. Last one I'll ask you, because I would go back and forth on this. I think one of the two has a good year. South Carolina and Kentucky both at 6.5 there. Who would you bet on more likely to go 9-3? Of those two, because I think one of them does. I think one of them goes 9-3.
And just for the listeners, we got Auburn, Mississippi State, Kentucky, South Carolina, Missouri at 6.5, and then Ole Miss, Arkansas, and A&M at 7.5. So you're saying between South Carolina and Auburn? Is that how you said?
No, South Carolina and Kentucky.
South Carolina and Kentucky.
I think one of them goes 9-3. I think it's Kentucky, but you could stat like
9-3.
If Devin Leary is anywhere close to what he was 2 years ago, yes.
That's fair. I think Kentucky is the only candidate to do that between those teams. Like, I don't know. South Carolina, it'd be hard to be real positive about 2023 if I'm a South Carolina fan, other than just like the intangible feeling of like, no one thought we were going to be good in 2021, and we had coach of the year. No one thought we were going to be good last year, beat Tennessee and Clemson. So just this like feeling of like, oh, no one ever thinks we're going to be good, and we're going to break through. I get it. Like you got confidence in Beamer. The program just feels way more positive. Like right now, it feels like you're in a good position. But to get those transfers the way they did, to lose those transfers the way they did, it's just so demoralizing. Like, oh, but you kept Spencer Rattler, and it's like, well, Is that the one we wanted to keep? Like, obviously he's a starting quarterback. He's fine, but have you gotten more good than bad out of Spencer Rattler? Like, I don't know. Maybe winning those Clemson and Tennessee games alone makes it all worth it, because that's kind of where South Carolina is. It's like the good seasons versus the bad seasons just kind of depend on like the memories, the marquee wins. It's like, oh, I remember the moments. Like, yeah, had that big win over Georgia. We had that big win over whoever, over South Carolina, over Tennessee. So I don't know where the ceiling is. Like 7 feels like the ceiling almost for South Carolina, because Clemson's going to be good again. So you just have Clemson just sitting there at the end of every season. And like you're saying, Kentucky with Devin Leary could be better. Like Florida, like I'm not high on Florida, but it is year 2 of Napier, and you see a lot of improvement over teams in year 2, and like that's just not a lock. Like where you are as a South Carolina fans, there's like no locks on your schedule. Like you have some teams you think you should beat. Games you'll be favored.
Toughest schedule in college football going into next year.
I believe it. So Who do they have else out of conference? Like,
Clemson.
Is it just Clemson? Do they open with somebody? It's like North Carolina.
I think it is North Carolina. Yes, they open with North Carolina. They get Furman. Here's their schedule. North Carolina on a neutral site, at Georgia.
And that, not to interrupt you, but that's what always had, like when Missouri and Kentucky have those like breakthrough seasons, it's 4 cupcakes out of conference, like every time. And then they win 3 or 4 conference games, and they like, 8-9 wins. Like, here we go. Yeah. But I'll let you keep going.
They're at A&M, Florida at home, at Tennessee, Mississippi State at home, at Georgia, at Mizzou, Kentucky at home late, and Clemson at home late. But I think Kentucky is going to be on the flip side here. They have the exact opposite schedule, where it's like, I think Kentucky is going to be, when they come to Georgia on October 7th, let's go ahead and pencil this in. They're going to be a top 15 team, because if you look at this schedule, Ball State at home, Eastern Kentucky, Akron, at Vandy, Florida at home. As long as they take care of business against Florida, they're 5-0 going in the Georgia game. And then Georgia beats the crap out of them, and that changes the calculus there. But I would guess that is how it looks for them early, and people are like, oh, what could they challenge for the East? And then Georgia stomps on them, and it's like, okay, no, they cannot. And then you get Mizzou, though, at home.
It all depends on how they look. Like, if it's actually Devin Leary, like if they actually look like a good team.
They always lose at Mississippi State, so that's like the thing is like whoever the home team is in that Mississippi State-Kentucky yearly rivalry, the home team wins almost every year. So that's probably right? So that's probably a loss at Mississippi State. And then at South Carolina is huge, and at Louisville down the stretch there is huge. But you get Bama at home, but it's a tough year to get Bama. I mean, it's just tough to get Bama in the West draw. So
I would say maybe this might be the greatest year to ever get Bama, though. So at home, it might be the best thing that could have happened to them. And who else they get?
They call it the Bo Bryant. They do call it the Bryant Bowl, right?
I mean,
the Bear Bryant Bowl.
You have no idea what they call the Alabama Kentucky.
Do you remember an Alabama Kentucky regular season?
They call it the football school versus the basketball school.
I don't remember any Kentucky Bama football games regular season. Do you? Do you have any recollection of any Bama Kentucky regular season game?
That's a good point.
I have no recollection of any Bama Kentucky game.
I feel like there was one a few years ago. I want to say with Tua when they were pretty good, and I think Alabama beat the brakes off of them. I think.
I believe you, but I really have no recollection.
But yeah, you're right. That doesn't ring a bell necessarily. I'm gonna have to look up and see if I'm right though.
If you told me that they've played twice in 30 years, I'd believe you. Like, I have no recollection of those two schools playing each other ever in the regular season. Just none whatsoever. No memory.
That's a good point. And I think that's been the worst part about this experiment that's been the 14-team SEC is just you're not even in the same conference as the teams that you don't play in the West every year. Like, we're still waiting on Texas A&M versus Georgia and College Station. You know, like we're not going to 16 teams, and we're still waiting on that. So yeah, that's a good point though. I don't ever remember Kentucky, but it's also like, why would you? Like, it's not going to be circled. We only remember that Vanderbilt Alabama game from a couple years ago because that dude talked shit when it said Bama, you're next after they beat it's like Kansas State or something. So yeah, it's a very forgettable game.
There you go. Well, that's all I've got, Matt Green. Anything else you want to mention here before we wrap up here on this edition of the program?
I'm just going to inform the listeners that back in 2020, so that would have been Mac Jones, Alabama beat Kentucky 63-3.
Yeah, I don't have any memory of that one.
That was in Tuscaloosa. So last Kentucky win, you got to go back to 1997. 40-34. The Wildcats won. I would think 97. That's got to be Tim Couch for sure. Yeah. Oh yeah, Tim Couch. Back and Dusty Bonner as the backup.
I think they were running the air raid. So that was Mike Leach OC that year?
1997. That's definitely around that time for sure.
There you go. Well, for that guy down there in Tequila, Georgia, yes, he was the offensive coordinator. I just looked it up. For that guy down there in Tequila, Georgia, Matt Green. For myself, Chase Thomas up here in Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. That is all we've got. New episode, as always, next week. Check that out for first thing on your podcast feed on Wednesday mornings. We tape these on Tuesday night, so check out there on your preferred podcast player on YouTube if you want to watch these full episodes. You can always do that on the YouTube page, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Like us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. Chase Thomas Podcast. You'll find us there. Matt at Matt_W_Green. Myself at Pod Chase Thomas and Chase _Thomas as well. Matt Green, always a pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Yes. Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.